أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to utilize this opportunity to welcome you to our second episode of our series, The Jurisprudence of Marriage, or Fiqh and Nikah. Today we have chosen the title of Nurturing the Marriage Material. The reason why we have chosen this as our second episode is the fact that in the world where we are living, the biggest challenge is we talk about marriage to the prospective spouses or partners when time had already passed. From the Arabic perspective, there is a proverb which says, التعلم في الصغر كالنقش على الحجر. Learning something in childhood stage, it is like engraving on a rock. Meaning that if we are talking about a good partner in marriage, it goes without saying that that partner must be nurtured. The characters, the characteristics, the attributes of such a person who is going to make a good husband, such a person who is going to make a good wife, must be nurtured. I want to start with an introduction. And that introduction, I fetch it from Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وابتلوا اليتامى حتى إذا بلغوا النكاح فإن آنستم منهم رشدا فادفعوا إليهم أموالهم ولا تأكلوها إسرافا وبدارا أن يكبروا إلى نهاية الآية. This verse is addressing guardians. Allah instructs them by saying, وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى, test the orphans. Test the orphans in your guardianship, in your charge, until they reach a marriageable age. Then, if you find them to be mature of mind, then hand over to them their possessions. That is what I choose to be my entry point. This verse is talking about financial independence, economic independence. If you are in charge of an orphan, you are in charge of his estate, you are in charge of his wealth. Sharia commands you to first test that orphan before you could hand over his wealth or her wealth to him or her, so that that person can gain economic independence. Now, what came into my mind is, if we have to test an orphan to establish whether he or she is of a mature mind, before we could hand over the wealth so that he can attain the economic independence, isn't it by a greater reason that someone whom we want to assume the responsibility of marriage institution also be tested, also be nurtured? Because the challenge that we have today is the suitability for marriage on the side of a girl is determined by maturity. And this is what you hear. Young girl, you are now mature. Therefore, you are ready for marriage. Now, when it comes to a boy, it is also determined by age, and maybe we add on the financial ability. To a great extent, these are the two considerations that we always make. The girl has passed the puberty age. In the context of Uganda, she is now above 18, and therefore she is fit for marriage. Now, what came into my mind when I was reading this verse of Surah An-Nisa, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the guardians to first test an orphan before handing over the property so that an orphan can attain the financial economic independence, can we really leave it? Can we just take it for granted that it is just maturity, it is just the financial ability or economic ability that a person is suitable for marriage? Of course, the answer cannot be yes. In this case, this sends us to finding out if we are building the family institution, if we are building the marriage institution, it means that we need to go back to the grassroots. And that's why our episode today is going to look at this topic from two perspectives. Perspective one, those who are not yet there. You need to judge yourself along these lines. Are you a marriage material? The second is those who are already there. The mother, the father, the husband, the wife. Are you a marriage material? What can you do in order to improve on the current status or the current state? But also, in addition to that, you are now a mother. You have a boy, you have a girl, and 25 years along the road, this is going to become a husband, this is going to become a wife. The question is, what have you done to prepare them? The biggest challenge that we are facing now, and I even hinted on it last time, we are waiting up to close to the marriage ceremony. That's when we want to prepare the marriage material. This is more like what you hear, a person who has been living all his life without practicing Islam. Now, when he dies, even after burial, a certain mualimu comes and stands on the qabr and starts reading talaqain. This day, it is the day that you have left the material world. Now 2 angels are coming. They shouldn't scare you. They are like other creatures of Allah. When they ask you, Man Rabbuk, say, my Lord is Allah. Does it really serve any purpose at that stage? So it is the same that we are doing. Prior to marriage, especially in the last month, that is when our parents send us to counselors, if at all they actually qualify to be called the counselors. That is when they send us to the sengas, the kojas. And by the way, even their areas of concentration might be making a very little difference or significance. So our lesson today is to look at what constitutes a marriage material in Islam, from which you can choose, from which you can start nurturing this girl child, this boy child, so that at the end of the day, you are not going to be caught by surprise. In our previous episode, I remember our sister, Dr. Sauba, I think, she said that we need to talk to the young men. To a great extent, that is correct. Prior to my coming to this presentation, a certain lady who is having a misunderstanding with the husband, and they are now appearing before the Sharia Directorate, a lady said, talk to him, he's so arrogant. Talk to him, he's so adamant. In fact, the lady made it clear. You sheikhs, help us to see how you are talking to these young men, young husbands. But my question is, at 30, at 40, what can I do to change? The man is already having a mindset that you cannot change. The young woman is already stuck somewhere and she cannot change. And that's why we wish and we hope that this kind of series, once they start being listened to by the young generation, they can start rehearsing to see that they can come up with a change. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to use two models in order to set the ball rolling. I want to use two criteria in order to judge ourselves on whether or not we are marriage materials. The first criteria, the first model is the Quranic model. When I use the Quranic model, much as it is not going to be directly related to marriage, but from the Sharia perspective that I come from, Sharia is comprehensive. It happens to supplement one another. The model that I'm going to use, much as it was not specific on marriage, but we can use it to see to what extent can a young man, judge himself on whether actually is going to be a good husband or a good father. That model is the model of Surah Al-Luqman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the story of Luqman. And for those of you who are hearing Luqman for the first time, he was even branded as Luqman al-Hakim, Luqman the wise. So Allah brings this model so that along the elements that we have, we can judge ourselves and find out where are we. And I want to use this model to judge the marriage material of a man. Allah says, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. Listen to this attentively. That behold, when Luqman addressed his son while giving a piece of advice. Since Luqman was addressing a boy, I want to use this model. At the end of the day, by the way, I have certain four issues that we shall judge ourselves vis-a-vis our suitability to be marriage materials. Luqman says, Ya bunayya la tushrik billah. First element. Let's take this as the curriculum. Luqman calls his son and says, my dear son, never associate anything in life, never associate anything in worship with Allah. He's talking to a young man. How do we relate shirk with the success of marriage? How do we relate shirk to the success of marriage? The opposite of shirk is tawheed. If you are having a man who is a muwahhid, who is a monotheist, who has made tawheed at the center of all his activities, do you see a difference?
Doctor, for the interest of the students like me,
Yes.
we are now looking at the two models which are going to enable us
Yeah.
to identify which one is the marriage material.
True.
And if we are to look at the two models, you have told us that the first model you want to pick for us is the model of Luqman.
Yeah.
And you are trying now to drive us that if at all we want to check for the marriage material,
Yeah.
we now look at Luqman.
Mm.
And the first aspect Luqman is bringing in is do not go near shirk.
Do.
May I, as a student now, understand that right now I'm being told what to look for
Yeah.
in a person who is going to be a marriage material on the side of a man?
Yeah.
And should I say that Luqman is now giving me the hint on what I should be looking for?
Yeah.
Is that where you're driving us?
You must be a good student.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, we can now go on.
At the end of the day, we have 4 fundamental concerns. The moderator has just preempted where we are going. We have 4 fundamental concerns. Number 1 is the spiritual. Number 2 is the moral. 3 is the emotional. And 4 is the economic. So I want to say that much as when Luqman was addressing his young son, he was not actually preparing him for marriage. But I have made it a clear statement that Islam is comprehensive. Islam supplements one another. The aspects of Islam cannot be disconnected. So, let's go back to the model of Luqman. Ya bunayya, la tushrik billah. Oh, my son, don't associate Allah in worship with anything. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Committing shirk, it's a very great injustice. It's a very great injustice. After that, Luqman brings in another element. And that element is being dutiful to the parents. He says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتُهُ أُمُّهُ وَهَنًا عَلَى وَهَنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. I want us to try to pick out of this and relate them to the success or the failure of marriage vis-a-vis the elements that we want to cherish here. How do you look at a husband that is not respectful to his own parents? At the end of the day, if you have any conflict, do you have anywhere to report that person? By the way, one of the mistakes that young girls commit, you want to settle all your issues with the man, and you say parents have nothing to do with this. The moment you make that mistake, you have just landed yourself in trouble. Why? To a great extent, by the way, we are disciplined because we have some people we fear. So dutifulness to parents, it is one of the elements that I am so much convinced that a person who is a suitable husband should just have that element. After that, Luqman says, Ya bunayya, innaha in taku mithqala habbatin min khardalin fatakun fi sakhratin aw fi samawati aw fil ardi ya'ti biha Allah inna Allah latifun khabir. A third element. Luqman tells this young boy, my son, whatever small element whatever, anything small, even if it is as small as what? Even if as an atom, even if it is hidden somewhere in the earth or somewhere in the heaven, Allah will bring it, will expose it. It's about self-monitoring. It's about self-control. That even when you are aware, you still know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Then after that, Luqman says, Ya bunayya aqimis salah. Establish establish the prayers. In our respect, establish the 5 regular prayers. Wa'mur bil ma'ruf. Be among those who are enjoining good. Wanha anil munkar. Be among those who are forbidding evil. Wasbir ala ma aswabak. Patience. Be patient on whatever is affecting you. Then Luqman is cautioning the son by saying, Inna dhalika min azmil umur. That is not easy. He goes ahead. وَلَا تُسَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. The easiest translation here is, don't be proud of yourself. Don't be proud. وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرْحًا. In this world, don't move around with a kind of arrogancy. You feel that you are above each and everybody. Then it says, Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. Allah does not like any person who shows off, any person who is proud of himself. Then he says, waqsid fi mashyik. Waqsid fi mashyik. Take care of your movements. Waghdud min sawtik. Lower your voice. Inna ankar aswati la sawtul hanir. The worst of the voices is that of the donkey. Now I wanted to use this as a model for the young men to judge themselves along that. As we are going down into our presentation, we shall have a conclusion that this model, it actually gathered and included all the 4 elements that we want to emphasize in the marriage model. The spiritual, the moral, the economic, and the emotion. Now that is the model that I have chosen for the young boy. Let us go for a model chosen for a young man. Sorry, a young girl, a young lady.
Before you continue,
yes,
we are very sorry. This lecture is engaging, so sometimes we agreed that we can engage, then you can engage, such that doctor does not leave us so fast. These models, you are picking Luqman. Actually, alhamdulillah, that Luqman now has come into the equation.
Yeah.
And you are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a narrative of what Luqman wants his son to be.
Yeah.
And of course, Luqman wants his son to be good.
Yes.
And that's why you're saying, do not commit shirk, be dutiful to parents. My question here is, before we go to slip down into the detailed explanation,
true.
Should I, me as a sister also, be so thankful to check for these abilities in a would-be marriage material who is a man? I don't know whether my question...
Your question is very clear.
Yes, can I get the answer?
In other words, as we are discussing this model in respect to a young man, Should the sisters be interested?
Yes, should the sister be interested to look out for whether the guy who she's about to consider to be a marriage material is a backing guy. Because here Luqman tells his son, please make sure you lower your
Yes.
Don't be like a loud kind of donkey. Please, Esther, be patient.
True.
Should the sisters also take?
Yes. No doubt that sisters too should take interest. Why am I saying this? As we are going down, we shall find out that the four foundations that we have picked, the spiritual, it cuts across. It is not discriminative. But we shall be emphasizing much on emotional, we shall be much emphasizing with the side of the sisters. Now when it comes to economic, we shall be more emphasizing on the side of the young man, because according to Sharia, he's the one in charge of provision for the family. Morally, we are all responsible. So it doesn't actually mean that since Luqman is addressing this to a son, that the lady should not be interested in this. You get it? Now, this is actually going to be the same as we are discussing the sisters' model. Now, the sisters' model was specific. I decided to pick a lady known as Umama bint al-Harith. Umama bint al-Harith was seeing off her daughter prior to her marriage on the wedding night. Just like the tradition which we have, that before we go into marriage, they happen to send us to the Sengas, to the Kojas, so that they can have the last word. So let us see, what does Umama bint al-Harith tells the daughter, and specifically, this was on marriage. She opened up by saying,
was she Sahabi? Was she?
She's a Swaliha. She's among the righteous ones. Just like you have picked Luqman, and Luqman is also among the Swalihin. You know? She opens up by saying, Ay bunayya, my daughter, law kanat al-wasiyyatu li fadli adabin, if a piece of advice was meant for those who are disciplined, la taraktu dhalika lak, I wouldn't have burdened myself to talk to you. Meaning that she knows she has nurtured her well, she had brought her in the best way, but still, final touches. She says that if a piece of advice was meant for people who are disciplined, I would have left that for you. But, فَإِنَّهَا تَذْكِرَةٌ لِلْغَافِلِ, it is a reminder for a person who somehow, I don't know the meaning, how can I call the ghafil? Somehow is negligent. You know, it's a reminder to a person who has somehow relaxed. You know, وَمَعُونَةً لِلْعَاقِلِ, it is also an assistance to the wise. فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, remind, because the reminder always benefits the muttaqeen, those ones who are fearful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the introduction. She goes on to say, وَلَوْ أَنَّ امْرَأَةً, if there was any woman استغنت عن الزوج, who feels that she has no business to do with the husband. Why? لِغِنَى أَبَوَيْهَا, because she comes from a background, the father was rich. وَشِدَّةُ حَاجَتُهُمَا إِلَيْهَا, and that even the parents are so dear to this lady, لَكُنْتُ أَغْنَى النَّاسِ, I would have been the first. Because by the way, Umama, she was coming from a royal family. So she's saying, my dear, If someone was not interested, maybe we could say that someone is to do away with the husband because the background is okay. The father has the wealth. The father is so dear to the daughter. He says, I would have been the one. But he says, and this is the statement, وَلَكِنَّ النِّسَاءَ لِلرِّجَالِ خُلِقْنَا. Allah created women for men. وَلَهُنَّ خُلِقَ الرِّجَالِ. And also men we are created for. So there is no any shortcut. That is now the introduction. Then she says, Ay bunayya, my daughter, innaki faraqti al-jawwi alladhi minhu kharajt. Today you are getting out of the environment that you are accustomed to. وَخَلَفْتِ الْعُشُّ الَّذِي فِيهِ دَرَجْتِ. You are leaving the nest from which you were hatched. Where are you going? إِلَى وَكْرٍ لَمْ تَعْرِفِيهِ. Tonight you are going to another residence that you are not aware of. These days they are already aware. You know? But we are talking about the ideal. Ideally, the lady is saying that my daughter, the environment whereby everything is available, you are leaving it tonight. You are now joining another environment. The nest, the bungalow in which you grew up, you are leaving it tonight. You don't know what you are yet to find on the other side. وَقَرِينٍ لَمْ تَأْلِفِيهِ. Tonight you are leaving to go and meet a companion that you have never lived with before. This is the ideal. Because the real is that they are already there. You know? And that's why, by the way, challenges in marriage, you find out that someone has stayed with the so-called husband for some good years. Even they have produced children. Then they do the nikah retrospectively. You know? They do the nikah retrospectively. And that could be one of the reasons why our marriages are failing. So this lady says, Fakuni lahu ama. If you want to be a good wife, be to him like a slave girl. Yakun laki abdan washika. In reciprocity, is going to be to you like a servant. That's the introduction. Now after that he says, فَحْفِظِي لَهُ خِصْوَالًا عَشْرًا. Take care of only 10 issues, marriage material. Take care of 10 issues. Once you take care of them, يَكُلْ لَكِ ذَخْرًا. Whenever you are, you will be a pride to him. 1. Al-khushu'u lahu bil-qana'ah. Be loyal to him with contentment. So in our next discussion, we shall be looking at how can we train this young lady to be contented. I think we all know that greed is one of the factors that is actually failing our marriages. We have a lot of daydreaming. We have high expectations. You know? So the first element, she says that al-khushu'u lahu bil-qana'a. Be loyal to him and be contented. Number 2, wa husnu sam'i lahu wa ta'ah. Listen to him carefully and be obedient. That is the first and the second. Some few weeks back, I was talking about the importance of communication and listening to each other, and I made a statement which I also read somewhere. One of the challenges of the mistakes we commit in marriage vis-a-vis communication is that actually we listen to respond. We don't listen to understand. As the husband is talking, you are just thinking about how am I going to respond. As the woman is talking to you, the wife is talking to you, you are finding out what is the best way of shutting her down. We listen to respond. We don't listen to understand. I wish the marriage partners could be listening to understand. Once you listen to understand, then you are going to get a reasonable and objective response. Once you listen to respond, you are going to respond emotionally. So that is why this lady is saying that the first two things, one, be loyal, be contented. Number two is listen and be obedient. Number one and number two. Number three, التفقد لموضع عينيه وأنفه. Take good care of his eyes and his nose. There is a lot of hikmah in these two. In other words, take care of what the sight of your husband lands on. When he comes back home, what welcomes him? Take care of his eyesight. Take care of what, how do you call it? Smelling. What does he smell? Then he says, فَلَا تَقَعَ عَيْنَهُ مِنْكَ عَلَى كَبِيحٍ. Never accept in your marriage that your husband, his sight lands on something detestable on you. Never accept that. That is why, by the way, in Islam, we are not allowed to have surprise arrivals at home. We are not allowed. If you are having issues with your wife, maybe suspicion has no place in Islam. You say, I want to land here so that some of them, even by the way, skip over the fences. I want to see what they are doing in my absence. My dear, that's not Islam. You shall be surprised to look at something, and that something, by the way, will spoil all your life. That's why in Islam, give her time. I always say, before you reach home, the Islamic guidance, the Islamic fiqh is, find out the closest point to your home. Make a phone call. That phone call should be communicating two issues. One, where you are. Assalamu alaikum Hajat. I am in Wakiso town. Wakiso is where I live. It is just 5 minutes to my home, so that my wife can prepare. I don't want my eyes to see something detestable on her. The second purpose of this call, what are you missing at home? That is the responsible husband. What are you missing? But you come in as a surprise. You don't know what they don't have. Then they say, but you know, we don't have sugar. You see, I am sorry, I didn't know. Why? So I want us to move slowly into this so that you can see on both sides. You know, the woman says, don't allow your husband's sight, eyes to land on something detestable. And then she says that, وَلَا يَشُمُّ مِنْكِ إِلَّا أَطْيَبَ رِيحٍ. My dear daughter and sister, never allow your husband to smell, to have any bad smell from you. That is the third and the fourth.
Yes, Doctor.
Yes.
I don't want you to continue before we put this in context. Our role as students is to listen and we ask.
Yeah.
And we make sure whether we are following. Up there when we were talking about Luqman, you gave us a context of Luqman, and actually I was so patient with it.
Yes.
But when we have come to Mama bint Harith,
Yes.
I don't know whether my colleagues are picking what I'm picking, but I'm seeing the aspect of communication in the first three things you have told us.
True.
Because Mama says, be loyal, listen carefully, and be obedient.
True.
And this is where now you're telling us that when we are to listen, some of us listen to respond, but we should be listening to understand.
True.
So if we want, and also now I want to join these 3 points.
True.
And we pick something. Being loyal, listening carefully, and also the most important thing is the eye and the nose. Actually, for you to be smart at home, you must communicate.
True.
So I'm looking at these 3 aspects and looking at homes where there is no communication to check whether they will fit in Mama's kind of, because there is no way you will understand what I don't want to see unless when we talk.
Exactly.
There is no way you will understand what feels bad in my nose unless when I tell you that Mukene.
Yeah.
Mukene, like those, because actually, with all due respect to the international audience,
yes,
some of them don't know Mukene, but it's silverfish.
Yeah.
Like personally, I hate it.
True.
And I told my wife at home, I don't like it.
True.
But one day she prepares it when I'm sick, and she tells me, try it.
Yeah.
I just smelt it and I felt, and I think Umama teaches us now the aspect of communication.
Exactly.
I don't know whether we just pray to Allah to make us understand it, but communication is in home.
Yeah.
I think there is no way you can be real obedient to a husband if
I agree with you.
You agree with me.
In addition,
now,
what I missed to tell you when we were discussing the model of Luqman, the fact that Luqman calls his son and says, Ya Bunayya, it is communication.
So now communication is playing a bigger part in nurturing the marriage machinery. And I think sister, because for her she has not yet reached to that
yes
level. I think we need now to look at the communication abilities.
Exactly.
Thank you. I've now understood.
I wanted deliberately to start with these models so that we can now go down to the nurturing.
Inshallah.
So that actually these 2 models are made to set the standards. Then after that we shall be asking ourselves, how can we achieve those standards? So we have just had number 3 and number 4. 5 and 6. At-tafaqqudu liwaqti manamihi wa ta'amihi. Take good care of his resting time and eating time. At what time does your husband want to rest? At what time does he want to take his breakfast, his lunch, and his supper? She substantiates this by saying, Tawatturul ju'i mulhiba. When a person is so much, how can I use the statement? Which statement can I use? If the person is so much defeated by hunger, he will run out of control. Making somebody feel hungry for quite some good time, that person can turn into something else. I remember one of my good Sheikh Imran Sari says, along the way, don't reach home when you are so hungry. If between your workstation and your home there is a small cafe, go for a cup of tea so that you can, harness, you can beautify your look. Seriously speaking, by the time you reach home, you are so frowned, you are wearing a gloomy face, not because of anything, but because you are hungry. So, this is what this lady is telling the daughter. Take care of his eating times. Also take care of his sleeping or resting times, because both hunger, both also lack of sleep, they might actually lead to something else. That is number 5 and number 6. 7 and 8. Al-ihtirasu bimalihi. Be a good custodian of his wealth. Economic. Be a good custodian of his wealth. Then, number 8, wal-ir'a'u bihashmihi wa iyalihi. Take good care of his status in the community. Now, I have been hearing some good sheikhs saying that you find a lady despising the husband in public, even when the husband is known to be of a good status in the community. Says, Ayogerachi, what is he talking about? Let him speak to you who don't know him. You get it? So this study is saying that take care of his wealth, be a good custodian, and also take care of his dignity, take care of his status. Then he says the best way of taking care of his wealth is to be economic. Husnul taqdir, to be economic, especially in this era whereby we are having soaring, and hiking prices of commodities. And then when it comes to his family, take good care of the people before him. The brothers, the sisters, in that way, we shall be taking care of his honor, we shall be taking care of his status in the community. 9 and 10. فَلَا تَعْصُينَ لَهُ أَمْرًا. In your life, never disobey him. Never disobey him. Of course, there are limits. If he's misleading you, especially to issues that are against your aqidah, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. In this case, don't be obedient. Then the last is وَلَا تُفْشِينَ لَهُ سِرًّا. Please, never reveal your husband's secret. Then he says, فَإِنْ خَالَفْتَ أَمْرَهُ. Once you disobey his instructions, أَوْ غَرْتَ صَدْرَهُ. You will charge him. No any husband wants to be before or under a disobedient, a defiant wife. وَإِنْ أَفْشَيْتَ سِرَّهُ. Once you reveal his secret, lam ta'mani ghadраhu. You will never be safe of his plot against you. This is the model of Umama. I understand it might have been a high standard, but for those who are there, check yourselves along that. For those who are in charge of young ladies, young men, it is now time to start nurturing. For those who are soon to be there, you still have some good time in order to, to rehearse about them, to see how you can put all this into your consideration. Now, having said that, these are the two models. I want now to handle the second last part of this communication, this episode. Some scenarios. Scenario 1, I'm aware of a Muslim lady, professional. She studied a very good course. She has some 4 biological children with her husband, the current husband. But by the time she married this husband, the husband also has some children from the previous marriages, around 4 of them. Now these are 8, plus the 2, now these are 10. But for sure, as I speak now, when you happen to know what she's going through, you might not believe. during the festive days of Eid, within her circles, there are many things we share in common. As many of us, we are looking for the best place to go and visit. Wallahi al-azim, she was looking for only 10,000 shillings to feed her family. She's a professional. I don't want to mention her professional course because she's a professional. MashaAllah, a beautiful one, well established. But that is the situation. And that situation has not started yesterday. She has been in that situation for like 3 to 4 years because of some economic hardships that the husband has faced. But whenever she talks to me, she says, Wallahi, I'm almost getting weaker because of what I'm passing through. Until when we developed in between me and her a slogan which says, Tijaratan lan tabur. Be patient. You are having a kind of trade in which you will never commit a loss. Be patient. That is scenario one. A practical one. I'm aware of her, and I might rightly say that I can categorize her among those which Allah says, La yas'aluna nasa ilhafa. She's not begging people just because of her dignity. But if you happen to expose, to uncover what she's passing through, but this is a lady, when she's communicating to her husband, you could think that actually she's the most happy lady on earth. When she's talking to the husband in your presence, the way how she's talking, praising and so on, you could think, mashallah. But this is what she's passing through. To me, I feel that she had a good nurturing. She had a good ushering into this institution. That is scenario one. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on her side and improve the status of her family. That is scenario one. Scenario two. I think 5 to 7 years back when I was renting, I was near to a person, a husband, mashallah, with a good wife, mashallah, and with children. The children, 3 of them have actually passed like 15 years. Let's say that they are now above the puberty. But the young woman could wake up early, prepare tea to leave for this husband and the male children. Then she could go, especially in holidays, she could go early after preparing the tea. She would go with the young daughters to go to the farm. You know? As they go to the farm, they come back at around Dhuhri time to prepare for lunch. The question is, what has the husband and the boys been doing? I swear by the name of Allah, from the day she left until she comes back, the two are just seated there conversing, talking about Arsenal, talking about what and so on. So the woman is more like a donkey together with the daughter. I don't know whether it's a culture, but that's it. But you could really see this woman suffering to offer light when she's melting down. Now, because I was closer, I could talk to these young boys and I say, why don't you go out and help the mother in the farm? You know? But to them it was not an issue. Now this is a holiday. When it comes to the days of going back to school, the gentleman comes to me and says that, you know, Sheikh, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made our provision because you are our good neighbor. We don't have books, we don't have what? I once told him, my dear, when I was growing up, our father could only and only give us school fees. The rest of pocket money and others, we could go and do the mukonzi, you know, preparing the brooms and so on and so forth. Why don't these young men, okay, do such work so that they can gather some pocket money? And I even called the young boys and I told them, you know what they did? They took the case to their father. Abdul-Hafiz is undermining us, is despising us. He's telling us that we should be laying bricks, we should be moving around selling brooms and so on. And by the way, the father agreed with them. If I may ask, how do you see the future of that kind of husband? If that is the nurturing, how do you look at it? Now, these are two scenarios. One is a woman who is patient, mashallah, and this is a true story. The other one is a man who is always waiting for the woman to suffer and bring the food to table. What I did not tell you, that when the man started being somehow ashamed, you know what he did? Near to where we are staying, there was these Sunday markets. These markets which are selling merchandise only on the markets which are selling merchandise on Sundays. So he gazetted a small place and he said that this is a place for Salah. He's a Muslim. Then he made one of the children an imam. After every Salah on Sunday, he could say, Wallahi wasiramu, we have here some issues, you know, the water for wudu and so on, as a means of getting some money. Now, if this is the kind of orientation, if this is the kind of nurturing, now this is a man you are soon to meet as a husband. Do you think he will stop somewhere and calls you that, what are you missing at home, before he could reach? You know, those are the two scenarios.
Doctor, before you leave those scenarios,
please.
You know, these are great messages which we need to pick. Often, our Muslim sisters, there's two scenarios you've given. The first scenario of a lady who is suffering at home, using all her resources, but to a man who is not appreciating, and this lady tends to cover up the man, the goodness of the man. And now the second scenario of a lady who has decided to be hardworking, and in the context of her hard work, the husband has not realized it. And this is where the sheikhs actually are leaving the gap. And before we go too much in the details, help me to cover this gap. My question is, what should we do? Which message should we leave to such kind of sisters? Our mothers, by the way, most of our mothers are really in this kind of category. They are spending a lot, but the fathers are not actually appreciating.
Yes.
Sometimes our mothers have decided to cover up our fathers, but our fathers actually are not living it. Why? Because our mothers were nurtured and our fathers were not nurtured. Or our fathers were nurtured but our mothers were not nurtured.
Yeah.
Can you help us bridge this gap? What should we do? Should we suffer? Should our mothers continue to suffer just because Allah will reward them? Should we? It is a gap, it is a ditch which we need really to address, and I want to know your take on such kind of marriages actually, because significantly in this country they are majority. Yeah. What is your take before we go in the details? Okay.
Before we go into details on this particular matter,
and my specific matter is, should the mothers continue suffering because for them they were nurtured? Because we shall be patient, Allah or there is a message of hope Yes, doctor. What's your
Now, this kind of situation, my take on this is that the mother should not be left to suffer, and we always give them a promise that your promise is Jannah. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them. But we need to come out to try and rescue this situation. I think this is where the role of the religious leaders, the role of the opinion leaders come into existence. That such people have to be talked to, but at the same time, we need to find out what is the cause. Because there is, I don't know whether it's a Luganda proverb or not, you can't combine two things. You can't combine being poor and being arrogant. If you are poor, this lady could see you on her side helpful, because at least you have the physical energy, you can help. But if you cannot provide, because many times, by the way, our strength is in the wallet. You provide and you say, I have given you the what? The money. But if you have not provided financially and you cannot even come on her side, I think that is extreme injustice. That's why in that situation, the religious leaders have to come in and also to emphasize the point of communication. By the way, it is true that our mothers were trained, were nurtured, but they also rarely communicate. Some people only listen and understand after being told. So in this case, my take is that we need all efforts in order to change that kind of situation. Okay? Finally, because time is not on our side, 4 grounds for nurturing a marriage material. Number 1 is spiritual. And it has been seen when Luqman is addressing his son. We have seen it. And that is why the standard that was set by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in ja'akum man tardawna dinahu wa khulqahu fazawijuh. If someone comes to you and you are satisfied and contented with his deen, his faithfulness, his religious element or component, and also his moral element, then you should give him a chance to marry from you. So, how can we nurture that? We can nurture that. 1, let's maintain a religious environment for growth and development at our homes, within our institutions. It starts from there. We can also have it by making a deliberate move to choose a faithful partner. We can also look at it just from the beginning. I usually ask, what is the significance of adhan on a newborn? Doesn't it have something to do with the spiritual element of the newborn? When the Prophet ﷺ emphasizes that we should make adhan, to me, the first message that should hit the ears of this young boy, this young girl, this newborn is, Allah is the greatest. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Once you follow that with a religious environment, then you are nurturing a marriage material vis-a-vis the religious element or the spiritual element is, as far as it is concerned. Nurturing Islamic values. But even before we go to that, the conduct of Akika itself. If we want a good husband in the future, let's create an Islamic environment at home. Why are we in an era where we don't miss birthdays, but you don't even remember whether your parents made for you Akika or they didn't? You know? But Akika has a message. A message to the newborn. A message to those ones who are around. You are trying to create an Islamic environment at home. Islamic values such as salah, such as hijab for the lady, modesty, among others. I spent some small time in Somalia, and you should be asking yourself why the Somali ladies are not finding much difficulty with hijab. They might be having some other issues, but with hijab, there is a little compromise because it is nurtured from childhood. To them, it's more of a culture. The Prophet ﷺ once told a young lady known as Asma. She was young and says, Ya Asma. Asma is a sister to Aisha, a young sister to Aisha, his wife. He says, Ya Asma, innal mar'a idha balagatil mahid. Asma, look at the Prophet's choice of statement, it says, innal mar'a, a woman, idha balagatil mahid, once she hits her first mens, it is not allowed to be seen from her except the face and the palms. You are creating an Islamic environment. What about our attachment to religious leaders and even our religious, places like mosques? Sometimes I say that these are some of the red flags when you are soon going into nikah. One, if the area imam is interacting with you for the first time when you are getting married, then there is a serious problem. If the imam of your locality is coming to know you for the first time when he is coming for your marriage, there is a problem at home. Where have you been? You get it? When you find out that the imam is disagreeing with your family on the certificate fee for marriage, there is a problem. It means, how comes that the imam of your area is not aware of you? If the imam is seeing the witnesses of your marriage for the first time on nikah, there is a challenge. Where have you brought the witnesses from? You get it? If you find the partner, whether the young girl or the young man, getting into a hot debate with the parents, whether the lady is going to put on the hijab kind of kadari, and whether or not there shall be music on her wedding day, there is already a problem. In other words, if it is music to be played, it has been the environment at home. If it is not to be played, it is a standard that has been set at home. Therefore, it cannot constitute a what? A debate. It doesn't matter whether the singers have come from where for what. Otherwise, we have made our parents hostages on our own marriages. I have ever attended one wedding whereby the father, who has insisted that there is no music, they assigned to him a certain bouncer on his side that he should not be allowed even to change position because he's going to interrupt the what? The ceremony. Now this simply means that an Islamic environment has not been created. In other words, these are some of the issues that we could come up with. Once we nurture this spiritual element, inshallah, we shall be scaling down a lot of challenges. One, shall there be any kind of shirk in that family which has been having the spiritual development? Given the fact that these days it is the order of the day. I salute the sheikhs who have come out in strongest terms to oppose shirk. Because now, even in your wedding day, your wedding night, among the piece of advice your singer gives you is that, mwana wange, my daughter, this one, Never leave this one. As if that is not enough, even when it comes to the eats and drinks prepared for the coming husband or the prospective bakos, they say that there must be a certain what? Element. If a spiritual environment was created at home, do you expect such to take place? No, because you shall be going back to the advice of Luqman, Ya bunayya la tushrik billah. Never commit shirk in your life. That is how we are now relating the models to what we are supposed to do. That is spiritual. And there is a lot that we can say about it. Let's go to emotional care. Emotional care is much emphasized on the side of females as compared to the side of what? Of men. Why? Because you know that naturally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the elements of kindness, the elements of tender care and so on. They are more in the mothers, they are more in the daughters as compared to the men. So, there is a lot that we can do as mothers in order to build this emotional content, this emotional element. If time could allow, have you thought about the significance of breastfeeding in imparting the emotional care to the young one? Do you know what it means to hold the baby closer to your chest and breastfeed it? Do you know what kind of message are you sending to it? You are sending the message of care. You are sending the message of love. You are sending the message of compassion. That's it. Now, second last is the moral. A lot that we can talk about the morality. Morality, how do we relate socially? How is our dress code? How do we talk to people? How do we do this? All these are supposed to be nurtured within the home environment. And then finally, the economic element. Economically, the much emphasis is the side of the husbands, the prospective husband. Why? Because it is our responsibility. I want to end by this. Once upon a time, our fathers used to involve the young boys in some economic activities that could help them to become good husbands. If we are talking about hunting, they could go with them. If they are talking about doing some activities that are bringing some income, they could go with them. That was the training. Our mothers also used to engage the daughters into such kind of activity that could make them good wives. When things changed, as Allah says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah does not change the state of affairs of people until people themselves do what? Change. The mother is at a distance from the daughter. The father is at a distance until the marriage time. That's when you bring someone. You bring, by the way, a stranger is the one whom you want to advise your daughter, to advise your son to be a best husband, to be a best wife. I want to end at this point. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Time, sister, I've just seen your message. We shall be replying it, inshallah. It's now time for questions. I will invite some 3 in and some 3 out, and so that we close, inshallah. It has been looking at nurturing the marriage material, and Dr. picked 2 models, the model of Luqman and also the model of Umama bintul Harith, where he was giving us the analogy of how to determine, to check yourself or your spouse to check whether you are actually in marriage material. And actually he has sent us to go and see the advice of Luqman to his son. Issues of shirk, issues of being beautiful for parents, etc. Doctor, before no, not before, as we were in the program, I now bring the questions. The brother asked that this aspect of being dutiful to the parents which you are putting or stressing, it comes at a time as if you are advising people to bring the parents into the context of their marriage. He wants to ask, how about if at all the parents are opposing you in your marriage aspect? What should be your take on that? Because you advised it. Then the other sister talked of the aspect of Akika, which you actually emphasized. It was just a snapshot, but somebody picked a question from it and asked that, how about us where the parents did not nurture us spiritually in the segment of Akika? What is the way forward now? That was the question. I shall be picking the questions later, but I want to give chance to the audience. Yes, brother. It's okay. I want to yeah.
Doctor, the question is, you say that the people that are being nurtured should bring their parents into the aspects of marriage. Let me repeat the question. Doctor, you say that the people that are being nurtured for marriage should bring their parents into their aspects of marriage. I want to give you a scenario of whereby a young girl at campus level was complaining that the day she brought her boyfriend to her mother for validation, the mom also got interested in the what? In the boyfriend. The mom stole the young girl's boyfriend to an extent that she became pregnant. So this girl, how do you convince such a girl to bring her next boyfriend or the next person he or she will consider as marriage material to the parents when such a scenario happened a short time ago? Thank you, Doctor.
That question is taken. Another question? Yes, Sister Shami. I would wish you to speak louder because my audience via Zoom is in total need of your voice. Yes.
Doctor, we are facing a challenge nowadays when we are two parties, husband and wife. We have different, how can I say it? Our religion background is different. You may find when the woman is more religious and the husband is moderate. The vice versa can also happen. I've seen some families whereby the woman is more religious and the husband is more moderate. And among the teachings we go through, it's mostly emphasized it's the man who is the spearhead for the family. You find in some families why akikas are not happening. Nowadays, we young girls, you hardly move out of your home without even touching your kids' heads. You can't even say any dua for them. Things are happening in homes because men are not leading the women. So it is us doing it that I can barely move out of my home without, I have to first pray for my kids. You even find husbands who forget to pay zakah, even do this sacrifice for the animals for the Eid. I don't know what is happening, but I think it's affecting our marriages. We are living in a wrong .com era that we are forgetting the basics for our marriages, which is religion. Religion is very key. For example, I'll give some young girls here a scenario. For us at home, when you're getting married, my dad says, njagala musajja musiraamu ga Muganda. There is a reason why he puts musiraamu ga Muganda. Unlike Muganda, ga musiraamu. So I think we are losing out. Some men are very .com, even some mothers are very .com, that we are forgetting the basics of our marriages. That is my question. I don't know how you can guide us on that.
Doctor, we are addressing this, I think, and of us spiritual imbalance, because the spiritual imbalance in homes is causing us problems, where somebody is moderate and then the other one is, we normally use our word, the other one is all right, I want to pick one more last question from the audience, physical audience, then I go to the online sisters and brothers. I want to give, it has been gentleman, lady, then I think now it's a man. Yes, brother. Yes, please keep it precise because we are out of time. Yes, you can just come closer. Please keep your question close. Those of you who are online, you can even type it. I'll be in position to see it because time is not our best ally. We need to go. Yes, brother. Welcome, sir. Use the microphone.
About matters.
This is the microphone I want. For the Zoom audience. You
talked about including parents in family matters. So my question comes that sometimes the ladies tend to over-include their parents. They happen to over-include. Include the, yes, I'm coming. The lady calls every day that today we ate this, today we didn't do this, we didn't eat meat. So what should be the extent at which the lady should include the parents? At what extent should the lady or the male try to include the parents in the family issues? That's my question.
I think that I need to put it, to what extent should our parents get involved in our marriage life? Because you are the one who told us that man has to be dutiful to parents. I want to have the lady Vice President of Islamic University in Uganda to give us our last take. She should be the last question from the audience here, so that I go online. Yes, sister. Please keep it brief.
Doctor, my question is on the 4 grounds for nurturing, whereby when we are to get married, we have to look at an element of spiritual. But even us, when we are looking for men who are to marry us, we also look at that element. But you find out that people can pretend. Someone who does not even pray can call you at night that, hey, you wake up for tahajjud. So yet, in fact, they are just pretending. So how help us with some advice that can help us know that this person is bad spiritually, or that you should not take this person? Because for us, we be like, I'm taking a share, yet in fact, he's not a share.
Wonderful question from the lady. Doctor, the question is the pretense in the spiritual element. What is your advice on it? I would like now to turn online. I request my ICT team to help me link me to the online. I'm just going to pick those 4 hands as they are. I will begin. Let me begin with Brother Musongule. Brother Musongule, you are on. Can we let my ICT put you on? And I think I have unmuted you. Yes, Brother Musongule, can I get your text on this issue, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi
Wa
I want to appreciate the doctor about what he has discussed. My take is on the very last statement doctor said, where he said about nurturing children. After some time, I don't know how doctors can take it. In my interaction sometimes with ladies who complain that the husband is mistreating them and so on, I always tell them that please, you have also boys. Try to tell your boys to behave well when they have their other people's daughter. And always try to tell them, treat well that wife you have, the way you want your daughter to be treated. so that people can start feeling that essence. But I see mothers in this aspect as being the cornerstone. If we are to change the generation to come, let mothers take responsibility of nurturing their boys, telling them you should always treat well your wife, so that maybe as time goes on, we shall have many good boys who will treat very well good girls. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Musungule. And actually, let me use this time to thank Brother Musungule. Happens to be the administrator of Makerere University Mosque. We are with him via Zoom, and I think he will be helping us to link the Makerere students to this program. Yes, Sister Fatina Nachtende, Council, I think. This name is so familiar to me. My ICT team, can I have Fatina Nachtende?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for this beautiful thought and arrangements. I have a question and a concern. There's usually young girls who want to get married and they are brought up from really very poor families. So in making their choices, they have issues balancing between the religion and the economic stand. Because their work is always, I have suffered enough, I am not suffering again in my marriage. So they end up making mistakes, they end up getting confused. Should I decide to marry this staunch Muslim man, but then poor, but then I don't want to suffer again? So kindly, doctor, help me guide them. What should we do? How should we advise them? Because they approach us and honestly we have sometimes we have no answers. Is that enough, Mayan? Thank you so much for this arrangement.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Fatima. Doctor, that one is a critical one.
True.
Really, sometimes you want to marry the sheikh, but again, he's poor. Sometimes you want to marry the rich one, but again, he's not a sheikh. And really, yes, really, it's an imbalance. So really, doctor, you know, these sheikhs of Sharia should also know that we are humans.
True.
Sometimes you leave us with no balance. Really. Let the ICT team now bring me Badruddin, Brother Badruddin Saddam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Barakallahu Fikum. My question, I have around 3 concerns, but in brief, the first one is about a spiritual element, whereby it includes Aqiqah ceremonies and other ceremonies we talked about. But the major concern is on to Aqiqah. If at all my parents never did it for me, and now I'm already old, I have my family, I have children, and now I'm also preparing to do an Aqiqah for my children. For example, am I also allowed to also include my own Aqiqah, and I make it one Aqiqah, or like 3 Aqiqahs into one? Then secondly, I request for, I beg your pardon onto that third element, I missed it. Onto the 4 ways of nurturing a marriage material, I missed that third element. Then lastly, onto economic element. Doctor, like as it is actually, as it is stated, economic element. First for now we are an economic, I don't know how we can state it, but the economy is down. And now there are some gents who are really willing to marry. But you find someone living in one single room, but the man is so high, is willing, and the sheikh is there. She's also willing to get married to him. And actually, I had a sheikh advising gents, telling them that
Brother Badruddin
is living with us, not yet ready.
Brother Badruddin, thank you very much. The concern has been picked because of time, really. The concern has been picked, and it's one of those, the imbalances we are talking about. Lastly, let me just have my last Sister Kasule Aisha. Sister Kasule Aisha is an accounts assistant at the Islamic University in Uganda, Kampala campus. Yes, Sister Aisha, can we have you?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
First of all, I will thank you for this initiative. And my question is actually connected to this. Alhamdulillah, there is a very big gap between the youth and the elder, like the elder people. So I think that's where the marriage problems are coming from, because whenever you have marriage issues, and also from the youth, they don't know where to run, to whom to go to question, to solve their issues, to ask what should I do. And in more cases, they think that those people are too old-fashioned. They can't tell them to act according to the society, according to what is the society they are living in, the .com society. Yes, the way Stashani said it. So my question is, how are we going to bridge that gap between the elderly people and the youth, because they don't know where to go to whenever they find issues in their marriage? Yes. So if you got the wrong person, will tell you the wrong information and will find that it will backfire in the future. That's my question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh. Sister Aisha, I think this is the disconnect. Doctor, we have the disconnect between where we should get the advice from and us. Because you, the doctors, you see your stories a long time ago, and then Sister Shanim is saying, we are looking at the now tense. How do we now address it? And before Doctor comes in, I would like us to remember that in today's discussion, he has given us the two models in which we need to test ourselves whether we are nurtured enough for marriage. Let the men and those who want to look for men go and check to the characters of Luqman, and let all the women and those who want to check for the women, Luqman is the son actually, come and check to Umama bintul Harith. Those of you who would wish to know what the message of Luqman is and for Mama is, inshallah, we shall be having it through our Al-Hidayah Media YouTube channel, inshallah. Now, Doctor, we have 3 minutes to finish this. I don't know whether it's enough.
I will try as much as possible to summarize. First, I want to thank all people who have reacted and responded to this discussion. To what extent should we involve our parents? Actually, my point here was not on involvement of parents, because involvement of parents will come at the level of selection. Here I was saying that among the elements of a good husband is the one who is dutiful to his own parents. Why? Because of many factors, you know. First of all, the element of blessing. You want the blessing and so on. In other words, that's why I asked, are you comfortable to be with a man who is disconnected with the parents? And this is why I even stressed by saying that in many times, actually, our discipline is regulated because we say, how will my father hear that I have said this? Now, if you are not dutiful to your parent, it means that this kind of husband is taking you and you are only alone. He will be free, will be having the absolute freedom to mistreat you in any way that he wants. After all, you have nowhere to report him. That's why the element of being dutiful to our parents comes in. In other words, if the person has not respected his parents, do you think that he can respect you as a husband or as a wife? This is the background I came from. Now, the issue of Akika has been stressed, but I want to summarize it by saying that the position of the ulamas, the majority of ulamas, is that any person whose parents did not conduct Akika for him, he's allowed at any age to do Akika for himself. So Saddam and others, that one I have answered it in that way. As long as you can identify an animal for each and every individual, for you the father, for the children and so on. And by the way, Islam goes to an extent of saying that slaughter what you have. If the requirement is to have 2 goats or 2 sheep for the male and you have 1, slaughter that. That is why even they went to an extent of saying that you can slaughter 1 in this year, and if the means are available next year, then slaughter the second. As simple as that, because one of the foundation of Islam is simplicity, because وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. There is no complication, there is no difficulty in religion. Now, Sister Shamim talked about the different orientation, whereby you find a religious sister learning into the hands of a less religious, actually a non-concerned member, as far as religion is concerned. Islamically, ideally, the husband should take the lead in the family. That's what it means, الرجال قوامون على النساء. That's what it means. It simply means that the husband is supposed to take the lead spiritually, economically, morally, because the way how our society has actually been made, to a great extent, our wives learn a lot from what? From us. But the reality, of course, it is suggesting otherwise. You are finding out that, by the way, these days, women are taking lead in ibadah and so on and so forth. It is a challenge that we need to think about how can we address. Over-inclusion of parents. I didn't say that when, like the issue which was brought, where the scenario whereby a certain young lady takes the future husband, you know, to the mother, and the mother picks interest. I think that is extreme, you know, that is immoral, you know. Otherwise, what would have been the ideal is that this parent is supposed to be involved in the choosing of that husband, you know. He's supposed to do like that. He's supposed to be like that. And we shall discuss more when we come to the role of the guardian. There is always what we call an abuse of rights in guardianship. And this is also answering another query whereby somebody says that if I bring my prospective husband and the parents are not interested in it, there is the guardian, that is especially the father, should always come closer to the sister, to the daughter, to see what is better for them. And there shouldn't be any abuse of right here. And we shall discuss that one when we come later, inshallah. Pretense in faith, I think it means that there is a step that was missed. Because this man is pretending, because you are seeing him today and you are concluding on his suitability today. And by the way, you are doing a responsibility which is not yours. Let our guardians know that it's their responsibility to investigate the future husband from A to Z. My dear First Lady, as I always make it clear, wallahi, you cannot investigate about me. You have limitations. You know, you have limitations. But if it is my brother Buyondo, who is your father, investigating about me, what boundary? You know, even if it means to search me, say, put off the clothes, I am under obligation to do that, as long as it is within the limits of what? Sharia. But if it is you who is choosing your own husband, then expect a lot of pretense, expect a lot of false promises, and so on. Leave that responsibility for the guardian. And yours, the moment you pick interest, share the interest with the guardian. The guardian's role is to investigate and not to leave any stone unturned. Okay. Brother Musungule, I agree with the statement. I want to add on that statement, I always challenge, you know, the married couple, husband and wife. I always challenge them with the question, in addition to what Brother Musungule has said. If you are a good husband, really, in your mind, because balil insana ala nafsihi basira, you feel it. Do you pray to Allah so that He can get for your daughter a man like you? I want you to wake up for tahajjud and say, Alhamdulillah, I'm a good husband. And I pray to my daughter to get a good man like me. If you can do that, you're a good husband. If you are a good wife, wake up and say, oh Allah, I request that my son should get married to a good woman as myself. Once you reach that extent, then you should appreciate that, mashallah, I'm a what? I'm a good husband, I'm a good wife. Economics, the economic element, we always, okay, Sister Fatina asked about how do we balance. Some sisters come from poor families and really they want to select the religious ones, but in many cases the religious ones are also not okay. How do we balance? It is about the order of priorities. You know? The order of what? Priorities. You know? When you have the order of priorities according to Islam, religion first. But also don't forget that you need at least the minimum compatibility. The minimum economic compatibility. Yes, you want to marry this sheikh, but he cannot, is falling so much below the average. You know? So at the end of the day, by the way, the marriage is not going to work out. Because you shall be like, I want this kind of quality of hijab, and the man cannot afford it. At the end of the day, it's going to be wrangles, and the marriage shall end up in failure. So, order of priorities, and also look at the minimum compatibility, economic compatibility. Then, those of you, you know, Saddam, I think, asked about the economic situation. The answer is always look for the best suit. Look for the best person who shall be understanding the economic situation that you are passing through. And then finally, how can we bridge the gap? You know, last time I was in Nairobi and they were talking about these generational gaps. The generation disconnection, as you have said. They have categorized, we have the generation X, we have the Y, we have the Z. We have what we call the millennials now. You know, the millennials, those who were born after 80s, you know. Now, those ones after 80s, vis-a-vis those before, it is a generation what? Gap. But I want to give you the best way to go about it. For how long has Quran, since when was the Quran revealed? How many years have passed since the Quran was revealed?
14,000.
14,000. Is it not yet applicable in the contemporary setting?
It is.
So we can easily balance by getting the wisdom from those before, and then we see how can we incorporate it in the contemporary what? Setting. We need their wisdom, but they also need to understand that many things have what? Have changed. How do we mitigate the two? That is an assignment for each of us.
I think we come to the, I don't know why my ICT showed me the raising hand, but it's okay, we can have it as the closure. We can have Imam Kasos give us the closure. Imam, you're very welcome, and you give us the closure of the closing statement, and also we shall close from your comment, inshallah. Imam, we are hearing you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I want to thank Dr. once again, but mine is a question, I have a simple question about parents and their children. When our children get married, is it right for us to oversee what is going wrong? If my son marries somebody's daughter, and there is maybe a case that some people are putting, there is a problem with variance or disparity in the levels of faith between the two. Me as the father of the son, is it in order for me to direct my son to put his house in order by respecting religion and treating the wife well? Or he's married, he has gone, I have no what. Talk my nose into their affairs. Marriage is an institution between two people. Some people say.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brother Uthman, I will get your question. If you don't mind, you can send it, because really it was supposed to be there. Yes, I think it was quite a good ending question.
Yeah.
Can we have the answer?
True, if you are the father of the son, and you see that things are not going on well, you know, do you have the moral, the religious authority to poke into the affairs of this son that put your house in order? Why not? You know, the Quranic guideline is watawasaw bil haqqi watawasaw bis sabr. You have an obligation as a parent to instruct your son that put your house in order, especially in those matters you see that they are of common good, both on this dunya on the akhirah. Besides that, any parent would like to replicate as many people like him as possible. So if you see that your son actually is not doing well, it's your responsibility so that you come in for advice, so that you can see that he can be like you, even better than you. In this case, I don't see it as an intrusion into the matter. I don't see it as poking your nose into the matter, but it's actually religious obligation.
Because in fact, Fatima, the relationship between Fatima and Ali can answer Imam.
Yes.
Because we see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima coming to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam complaining, and then the Prophet advises her or is according. I think it's a gesture that the parents still have the role to ensure the stability of the families of their children. I think that's it.
If it is a concern of Amru bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, that a person whom you are not related to can come in and say, Sheikh Abdul Hakim, please be in order. Why not the parent?
Yes, Brother Uthman, you said your question was not answered, but Doctor answered it. He answered the issue of Aqiqah generally, where he said that whosoever did not have the Aqiqah, you can decide to have it on your own. Thank you very much. Behind the team, behind the cameras have been my ICT gurus, Brother Swade, Brother Wanika, and Brother Mwima here at the Islamic University in Uganda. The Al-Hidayah Media team is here with us. We thank you very much. Please go to their YouTube channel for all these programs about Dr. Abdul-Hafiz. Go to the Al-Hidayah Media channel. You will be in position to follow us. Also, the Solo Islamic team are with us. Please go to their Facebook pages. You will be in position to follow us. And I think by tomorrow they will have uploaded this. Till then, inshallah, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati lamma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Every Tuesday, 4:30, inshallah, to 6, be in position to have us via Zoom.